Vos émissions préférées sont toutes sur Radio Grand Lac.
Your English Weekly. La chronique 100% en anglais de Radio Grand Lac avec Klaus.
Alors, pas tout à fait 100% en anglais aujourd'hui. En tout cas, j'aimerais faire un peu de pub pour mon employeur et notre magnifique établissement linguistique qui s'appelle Your Language Workshop à Aix-les-Bains, Laravoir et au Bourget du Lac. Donc, cette émission est financée par cette école de langue, non seulement pour l'anglais, mais aussi pour l'allemand, pour l'espagnol, pour l'italien et quasi toute autre langue qui vous intéresse. On peut vous donner des cours, on a des ateliers, des événements culturels. Et donc, prenez contact avec nous à yourlanguageworkshop.com, donc comme votre atelier de langue tout attaché, mais en anglais.com, yourlanguageworkshop.com. Voilà, aujourd'hui, j'ai une autre invitée que je vais interviewer en anglais pour un niveau de langue B1, c'est pré-intermédiaire, ce qui comprend ce jargon. Et l'enregistrement se trouvera sur la chaîne YouTube de Radio Grand Lac 92.1 dans quelques jours. So, Laura, I am very honored and pleased to be interviewing another fellow American today. I've been lucky enough to have several young Americans in the studio these past few weeks. Welcome to Radio Grand Lac and to Your English Weekly.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Cool. So, as usual, I'm going to be interviewing you about one of your passions. Before talking about the passion that you've chosen that I don't know, can you tell me what passions you thought you might want to talk about, but you didn't choose to talk about today? If you have,
Sure.
Yeah,
that's a great question because there were several that I considered. I think one of my passions is education. I'm a teacher back in the States, an English teacher, but I also teach English as a foreign language and literacy, so reading as well. That's something that I care very much about, education, and, helping people access their education. Another thing I think I considered was, in a similar vein, one of my other interests and passions is linguistics. So like I mentioned, I am trained in teaching English as a foreign language. I enjoy learning languages. I've been trying very hard to learn French recently. That's been my main project as of late. But those are things that certainly people can get me talking about, and I can talk kind of forever about those interests.
I was actually wondering whether you're going to choose English as your passion or not. I feel we don't know each other very well, but we have spent a class or two together. And as I wrote you, I feel that you're probably an excellent English teacher. I feel your passion and compassion in those areas. And you were talking about education. Let me just make a side remark for our French listeners, because education is actually what they call a false friend between French and English.
Oh, yes,
it doesn't have exactly the same meaning. Education in English means more of what you do in school, whereas
your studies.
Exactly. Whereas education, even though it can have that sense in English, but in most contexts, it's about your school. And in French, of course, as you French people know, it's more like a family matter. So you're talking more about school-related education.
That's right. But also, I like to use the word more broadly as well. So not only specifically academic education, I also think I care a lot about the other things that can be learned in life as well. And things, skills and just knowledge of the world and getting to know more about how this amazing and huge world that we live in, culture, education, those sorts of things as well. But yes, my experience is more specifically in the school education realm.
Mm-hmm. And you were talking about literacy and helping seems important to you that everyone be able to access, literacy. That means being able to read and write. Have you been dealing with perhaps Hispanic clientele or public in the States? Because there's a big Latino population in the United States that I have encountered in New York. I'm from New York, as some of my listeners know at least. And often I've run into people that don't speak English, even after being in the United States for years or even decades. Is that also something that you've encountered? And are those people that you've been trying to help, or what's your experience been?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I have both studied how to teach English as a foreign language as well as literacy. And there is a whole lot of overlap between the two, especially when you are in public education in the United States. A lot of, for example, the students that I help with their reading skills are also students for whom English is maybe a second or a third language, or maybe they're bilingual. There are certainly a lot of students in the United States who are in public schools in America and being instructed primarily in English, but maybe at home they do not speak English whatsoever. That is very common. It depends on where you are as well, like what demographics you'll see the most. But certainly, that's a very common thing. Yeah, you'll find in the schools.
Yeah, people who don't speak English fluently or very well, and that's definitely a challenge for them, like you said. Oh, I love it. You said for whom. Finally, someone who uses the whom. Of course, now everyone says who, but whom, you can use it as a synonym for who when there's like an object, a direct object or an indirect object. So yes.
Yeah, wonderful. I mean, I'm an English teacher, so you might not find that everywhere, but you'll find it with an English teacher for sure.
Yeah. And also I wanted to pick up on another linguistic thing that you said in a similar vein. I think vein, it has me thinking of like wood, like in a similar way. It's not like the adjective to be vain, like to be...
Sure. More like, even a vein in the body, like the transmit
blood. True. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. VEIN. Yes. True. I was imagining VAIN, yes, in my silly childlike mentality sometimes. Wonderful. Okay. Any other like passions that you won't want to have not mentioned, that you won't talk about in depth, that you'd like to mention, or were those the two major ones?
Those were the major ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is the passion you're going to talk to us about today?
So this one I want to focus on is still very closely related to the two that I just mentioned. It is books and writing.
Great. So do you write?
I do, yes.
Okay. What do you write? What? I don't want this to cause any writer's block. So be sure also to take care of yourself and not...
Oh, thanks. I just really enjoy writing very much. Right now, it's only basically a hobby, just something I do, in my leisure time. It's a form of art that really comes naturally to me. I enjoy the arts in general, but I think literature and writing is the one I might connect with the most on a personal level. Because I love writing so much and because it just does come very naturally to me. Whereas I know for many people, it's like a real chore to have to write something. And having my experience with students, I know for some people, it is a real chore that they would like to avoid. But for me, because it comes naturally, I just kind of do it all the time. So to answer your question of what do I write, I write in my journal. I write short stories. I write long stories that could be maybe developed into a novel. I've written a few screenplays. I've written poetry. I've written children's books. I've tried a little to write a stage, like a theater drama, but maybe that's not my strong suit. So I haven't tried very much there, but yeah, I write a lot of things.
Okay, cool. Just to work on the vocabulary a bit for our listeners. So a screenplay would be something more for film?
Right, yes.
Okay, whereas a theater script is obviously more for theater.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned the word short story and novel, which once again are kind of false friends, especially novel, because novel in French is roman, and a nouvelle is a short story.
So I see how that could be confusing.
Definitely, yeah. And is the slight difficulty you've encountered writing like theater scripts perhaps related to the possible fact that you're going to set us straight on that you have perhaps less contact with theater than with movies and with those other literary forms?
I've had some experience in theater. That was something I enjoyed when I was in school. I still enjoy it from the audience perspective these days, but I think it's just something about every type of writing requires a very specific process and a very specific style and format of writing. It's not all the same. So I think that it makes a lot of sense that I would at least have a few that are not as easy for me.
Definitely.
So I think, maybe it's something about the fact that as I tried to write a theater script, I would have to imagine actors live on stage, acting it out, the words that I'm writing, and stage directions and things like that. And it's just a very different thing to imagine in your mind versus, when you're writing a short story or a novel, it's all within the mind. It's not taking place in a physical space.
And I guess what I was getting at, or was trying to say in other words, is that it's not such a central art form in our society. I think we're much closer, at least I am, and I think I'm not alone, to movies, even though I'm not much of a cinephile, and even to other written forms, literary forms, than theater, which has become, despite exceptions, of course, kind of a minor art form.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was talking about writer's block, and you were talking about writing being a chore for some people and it being coming naturally to you. I, as kind of an amateur musician, know the feeling of like easily playing a piece from by sight. The first time I interpret a score is in partition, and it works rather well, and I feel good about it and stuff. But then I'll realize that if I don't work on it, there's like a plateau that I won't surpass. And then if I really analyze what I'm playing or what I'm writing, it does become work, and it's kind of unpleasant, but I'm wondering if I'm not underestimating you, but what does that inspire you? Do you think it's like a phase that you have to go through where even something pleasurable and something that comes naturally does become work, even a chore?
That's a great question. I think that I don't want to be misleading in the way that I phrase that to make it sound as though writing is not difficult, even for me. Writing a story, writing something longer like a novel, it is work and it is difficult work. And I guess when I say it comes naturally, I mean that there are various forms of expression. For some people it's verbal speaking. They enjoy speaking a lot, or for some people it might be music. Maybe they express themselves through music and that comes very naturally to them as a way of self-expression. So I guess I'm trying to say that of the ways of expressing oneself, writing is the one that I think comes most naturally to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think there's a lot of discipline involved in writing? If you want to be more frank and straightforward, I'm also, I guess, an aspiring writer. It's like one of the things that I've defined as like what I really want to put my energy into. And my problem is not being able or wanting to define exactly what project I want to do. And so I think I'm lacking discipline. What does that inspire you?
Yeah, I can relate to that. I think that's something I'm working on right now as well, as the discipline of it all. Because as I mentioned, when you asked what I write, I listed, 10 things. And so that's part of my problem is I might be working on several different projects, but not finishing very many of them, which in a way is how I like to work. But in another way, if I ever want to have a completed project, I'll have to really actually focus on getting one done,
Yeah, because I mean, if one defines too strongly the project one wants to work on or realize, and it's like business. It's like any other business, kind of. It becomes like it can become just like any kind of commercial object, even if it's not necessarily like related to money, but keeping it open like keeps it honest in some ways. That it's just you're following your artistic inspiration. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. That's something I think about sometimes, and I think it applies to any work of art, but to apply it specifically to writing, I think it does take a lot of courage in a way to complete a project, and especially it takes courage if you want to share it with anyone. That's how I see it as well. It takes bravery to do that. For me, the more I've pondered it, the more I think it even takes a sense of like trust, like a sense of faith in a way, to close the end of a story and to give it to someone else. It's like the book has a life of its own, or the story has a life of its own after that, and you no longer have any control.
Like giving birth to a child, also, like you give it to the world. It's not yours.
Exactly. Yeah, It's not yours anymore. Sure, you originated it, right? Like your metaphor. But yeah, it's going to go on to have a new life. It's going to be in the hands of other people. So I think part of it is, it's the difficulty of a release of control and a release of, having it all to yourself. You have to, be willing to use that sense of generosity and trust that it'll be a good thing ultimately, that it gets out to other people's hands for them to do with it what they will.
Okay. And what kind of vectors do you use to reach a public? What is the public, and what are the means by which you reach them, or you'd want to reach them? And don't feel obliged to take on any posture that you might not have. I mean, this is just one of your passions. So even if you're just a really budding writer, it's okay.
Right. I'll be honest. I've not shared anything broad scale or published anything yet. Right now, like you said, I'm still at the point of working on my projects, considering what it might look like when it's finished, what I might want to do with it. So that's something I'm currently learning about. Like, I wonder the same thing. Like, what are the ways that I might share my work in a way that makes sense to me, in a way that I would like to?
Mm-hmm. By the way, budding is like what a flower, I think it's always flowers, right? Mm-hmm. Do before they become flowers. So you're taking time budding, or, I mean, you're very young still. And so it's probably a good strategy. I'm sure many artists are kind of ashamed, or pretend to be ashamed of their early works. So it's probably a good strategy to hide them away in a safe place before they become good enough to satisfy one's own needs and demands. Yeah.
But also, I think as an artist, it's important to realize that your work will never be perfect. It will never reach the point where you can, probably most people would say this. Maybe there are a few artists out there who would say, no, actually my work is perfect. Thank you. But, there's going to be no point where it's actually perfect and you cannot revise it or change it anymore. And at some point you just have to be like, okay, I'm happy with it. I'm content. I'm just going to end it here, and then it's going to be done. You can't revise and revise forever and ever, and until you reach the highest point of perfect work. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it keeps it alive this way, because if it's too perfect, you try to make it too perfect, that can be paralyzing kind of. And I'm pretty good at, not in a mean way at all, but putting my guests on the spot by asking them if they could share. We didn't prepare this interview, and it was a choice not to, so it's a spontaneous kind of experience. But do you have any I don't know, you said you also do poetry. Do you have something that you'd like to share with us? It's okay if you don't. Just something that comes to mind that you could if it's not too personal or intimate or anything, do you have something that you have written that you know by heart and you could like share? Even if it's just a sentence. I see you're frowning, so I know this is a very difficult question. Or some kind of literary work that you'd like to quote. Quote is citer. Just a short phrase or sentence that you like or has touched you in the past, and explain it. Do you have any kind of little tidbit?
Oh, I wasn't prepared for this.
No, I know. It's a really bad
it's okay.
question, but we can get back to it if you want to think about it. Or,
sure.
Yeah. Okay. And so what kind of environment has been conducive, has been like helped you develop this passion? Like your family or teachers or any experience you've had, or just why are you so sensitive to this type of thing?
Yeah, so I think I noticed even from a very young age that writing is something I enjoy. And
where did you realize that?
Well, I'm thinking right now of I have like a little artifact from when I was a child. Me in our family, we keep a lot of like little trinkets and papers and pictures and photos and things from our childhood. So I'm thinking particularly there's a poem, I think it was a poem or a short story or maybe both, that I composed. I say composed because I did not write it. I dictated it to my mother so she could write it, because I did not know how to physically write yet, with a paper and pen.
You were very young.
I was very young. So I must have been maybe 4 or 5, maybe 6 years old. Like I said, before I could write. But yeah, I composed a little poem, and my mom wrote it down for me, and then I illustrated the poem. So to me, that's something I look back to sometimes to think, okay, yeah, it was from a very young age that I found this passion of mine, and ever since then, there's other artifacts from my childhood, from the further ages of short stories I created, little tiny books I created, all kinds of stuff that I'd written and imagined from that time of my life. So in one sense, I think I maybe was born with it. Maybe part of it is innate. But to what you said about the environment that fostered it, I did go to a school growing up during my my primary years that really did kind of foster an appreciation for the arts and literature and books, as well as things like nature and the sciences, which I also really have profited from. But I think that environment really did help foster and grow my love for writing and stories and books and my creativity. And yeah, I think in that environment, it really was an environment to help it grow. And then I remember specifically, I had an English teacher in high school. So this would be, much later after, and in a different school from the other one. This was a really large public school, kind of standard American public high school. And I remember I'd written in a paper, and my teacher, he told me that I was a really good writer and that I really had skill. And I had never thought of that before. I had never before considered that maybe this was something I was actually good at. I just kind of did it and just knew that I enjoyed it. So that was a moment for me that was kind of a turning point where I realized like, oh, maybe there's something here that I could actually develop further and could actually be something that I might want to use in some way or share in some way besides what I had been doing before.
Yeah, so important. Like educators, teachers, family, friends, anybody like supporting someone who is budding, and that gives us self-confidence and stuff like that. By the way, I just want to mention foster. It could also mean nurture. It means kind of to support, to help. And I like your ironic kind of use of artifacts, because it was, you're young. It's kind of something from a relatively distant past. I remember my first piece of writing. It was the dinosaur book.
Oh, nice.
Yes, illustrated by myself and in a big, what they say in French. I don't know if you use the same format, a DIN A3 format. No, it's like a double-sized format. Anyway, yes, and you mentioned also a standard American high school, very big and stuff like that. I have a very intimidating kind of memory of American middle school and high school. I actually hated secondary school in the States. I didn't go there for a long time, but you had this like nice interaction and support by your English teacher, if I understood correctly. And at the same time, I know there are so many great programs, extracurricular, not only intellectual programs like they have in France, but there's also a lot of support in clubs and musical and other activities in American high schools. That, like you said, is something you seem to have profited from, like honors programs and stuff like that. Where did you go to school, and what could you say about like your schooling? Also, if it's related to writing, that's cool too, of course.
I grew up outside of Atlanta, Georgia. So it was a kind of suburban high school. It was very, very big. I think my freshman class had about...
Freshman is the first year of high school.
Yeah.
And you use freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year also for university in the United States. So It's like ninth grade, which is the equivalent to something like seconde here.
Yeah, my class entering into high school, I think had maybe 800 students.
800?
Somewhere in that neighborhood. It was a lot. It was a lot of students. So to me, the school I had gone to prior, the one I mentioned that had a real focus on the arts and literature and things like that, was very, very small.
Was it a private school?
It was, yes. So I graduated from that school in a class of, I think, 7 students,
wow. Mm-hmm.
and then entered into a class of about 800 students. So it was a big change.
Shock.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think my high school was in general pretty good school. It was known in the area as being one of the better schools, but nonetheless, it was huge and intimidating. You mentioned, I think, your experience with American high school was intimidating. I was certainly, intimidated.
Okay. And what I didn't like about American secondary school was kind of this like perfect role model that you kind of had to follow, like valedictorian, which means the best of the class, and king and queen of the prom, and like the jocks who are very athletic people. And it was, as I said, intimidating. But Jean-Pierre's given me that end of the show look. So I just want to get back to 2 things. Like, have you been able to like search your databases for your internal brain databases for any kind of quote from literary quote, either your own or from elsewhere that you'd like to share with us?
I don't know if I'll be able to remember it word for word, but immediately the first thing came to my mind was a Harry Potter quote from Albus Dumbledore. I love those books. It's his quote that says something to the effect of, it's not where we're from that defines us, but it's our choices. And there's several of his quotes from those books that they come to mind a lot, that I really enjoy.
Okay, thanks a lot. Anything else you'd like to share on this topic that you've perhaps thought about and prepared? Anything else that you were dying to share with the listeners before closing?
Really, I think we've covered it all, but I always like to encourage people to, if they have a passion for writing or any of the arts, to go for it and to make time for it, because I think that the world benefits from more art and creative people making things.
Yes. As they say in French, a little tenderness in this world of brutes. Thank you so much, Laura. It was a great pleasure. And I will be seeing, I will be talking with a final guest this academic year next Tuesday at 12:05 at Your English Weekly. Thank you so much once again, Laura.
Thank you, my pleasure.
And thank you, Radio Grand Lac.
Le son de votre quotidien.
La voix de votre territoire.
Radio Grand Lac.